Have you ever wondered what it's like to sit in on a magazine editorial meeting? Well, this is your chance. You're listening to Salt Lake Speaks, a monthly podcast where our editors, writers, and staff dig deeper into stories, chat with newsmakers, and talk amongst ourselves about arts, culture, food, music, politics, or whatever else might strike our fancy. After all, we are Utah's biggest fans. Hi, I'm Andrea Peterson, and you are listening to Salt Lake Magazine's own podcast, Salt Lake Speaks. And today we are chatting with Matthew LaPlante. He is a local journalist, but actually works all over the world, travels a lot doing stories, and he is also a professor at Utah State University teaching journalism. We've actually had Matt as a contributor for Salt Lake Magazine, and he's written many articles for us, and his most recent one was in the Jan-Feb issue. You would find him under the story Incredible Journey. It talks about his exploration of the beautiful ski resorts here in Utah that he did, 14 of them all in 1 week. And this is part 2 of the full podcast, and Matthew will be taking us on his adventure from day 4 through day 7. And so to kick it off, we are at day 4.
Day 4, we wake up and we're just praying that the roads have been cleared. Yeah, for Powder Mountain. They have. We show up at Powder with what seems to be everybody else in the world, because everybody knows that there is 3, maybe 3.5 feet of powder that has been untouched because the resort's been closed for a day and a half. Oh my God. And the great thing about Powder Mountain, the really unique thing, is that everybody shows up and they hang out at this lodge, and then they set up outside of the lodge. And then they have like what I think they call it the releasing of the hounds, where so you don't start at the lift, you start at this line, and it's basically then when ski patrol says go, this guy who looks like Santa Claus says go, he drops his arm, and everybody races together to the bottom of the first lift.
Wow.
It's insane. And
that is exciting.
Eric's got this amazing video of it. It's like, you know the scene in The Lion King where the antelopes come, right? Or the wildebeest, whatever they are.
They're like running down the valley part area.
Yes, it's like that. It's like that, but on snowboards and skis. It's beautiful. You feel like part of something. You feel like part of something special. It's got to be how a wildebeest feels when they run.
Maybe they should rename it the Wildebeest Takeoff.
They shouldn't, yeah. And then the skiing was incredible. It was amazing. The powder was so deep. Every run was great. They've got great steep there. And they have one of the most epic moments of my life, which they have all of these beautiful aspen that were just crystal covered. And I was snowboarding through them, and it was like being in a dream. I know that's cliche, but it was like dreaming. It was so incredible.
It was amazing. Beautiful. And so had the snow, was it Bluebird Day, or was it still kind of cloudy, or was it still snowing when you were up there?
Intermittent Bluebird, and then it would snow for a while, and it was Bluebird, and it was snow for a while, and yeah, it was. It
does sound nice. Did you spend the entire day at?
No, we could have. We totally could have. But we were like, okay, let's take one last run. And our guide was like, yeah, okay, hey, let me take you to this one place, right? He's on Telemark, Eric's on Telemark. There's no problem for them. But Jared and I are on boards, and there's a big old traverse. He called it a medium traverse. No. Chest deep powder for at least a quarter, maybe longer than a quarter of a mile to get to this run. My leg locks up, my broken leg, like the metal in it is just like, no. And I can't move my leg, so I'm like using my snowboard to propel me along. It was kind of like both, so the morning was the most glorious ski experience I think I've ever had in my life, and the late morning was one of the worst ski experiences I've ever had. Those are some of those moments,
I'm not going to lie, I am completely fine with whatever you want to ski or board on or whatever, but those are those moments where I'm like, I'm on skis, you're on a board, you're stuck in snow, I'm moving forward. And I always like, you want to be friendly, like, here, grab my pole, and then sometimes when you're with friends, you're like, oh, I'm sorry,
oh yeah,
at the bottom.
And the pole thing works for like the groomers, right? But like we were in chest deep powder, so we were just walking. Jared, God bless him, took the lead, which is like even harder, and I was just behind him, but it was, oh my God, it was so hard, and I was nearly crying. It hurt so bad. We finally get out of there, and I'm like, why did we do that? It was a good run. It was a fine run, but it wasn't worth the hike. No. And so we finally get out there. I throw up.
Okay,
which
just add that
I think
in there.
Jared has on video.
Wonderful.
And I'm like, at one point I was like, I turned into the worst version of myself. I was like, turn your camera off. Turn it off.
Bleep,
Stop
bleep,
it.
Bleep, bleep,
And
bleep.
he's like, okay, I've turned it off. But he didn't turn it off because he's a jerk. So we get
As
to the
friends are.
Yeah, we have to take a lift out. I almost pass out on the lift. We get to the car and Jared's like, I think we're done, dude. And I'm like, well, you guys go, right? So we drive down together. But everything thought out. We took a couple of shots. By the time we get down to Solitude in mid-afternoon, I'm fine. Totally okay. And
New mountain, new experience.
New mountain, new experience. And when we get to Solitude, like if I didn't think I was fine, I would totally have been fine because all of a sudden I see Vivian Bangston, who's one of Solitude's snow athletes, like sponsored snowboarder. And she like comes riding up to us and she's like, the snow's great today. Where do you guys want to go? And I'm like, yeah, I'm good.
I'm done.
And so
Refreshed.
you're at Solitude, so you have to go to Honeycomb, right?
Right.
On a powder day.
Oh, definitely.
So we head up Apex left, we bombed down to Summit lift, and we hit the Black Forest, and there's so much powder. It was so amazing.
You really got lucky with the powder. I'm just thinking if you had decided to do 14 resorts in 7 days this season, you could do it, but I feel like the experience would have been way different.
It would have been way different, and I think it would still be good. When we were talking about doing this, when Jared and Eric and I were talking about doing this, we said like even if we don't get powder, it'll be amazing. We'll probably spend a little more time in lodges. We'll drink a little bit more because you can, and we'll race on groomers and we'll be silly and we'll like try to do stuff that we have no business doing. Like we'll go to the parks or something, right? And unfortunately, we got hit by the snow. But I do think this would be a fun thing to do even on a Bluebird week. I really do. And but yeah, we got totally lucky. Solitude was amazing. We stayed there until 4 p.m. When Solitude closed. We got 3 good hours of skiing in at Solitude. We could totally legitimately say that was a good day of skiing at Solitude. And then we headed to Brighton.
So you did 3 in one day?
Yeah. We started we started at
Okay.
9 a.m. at Powder Mountain. And we went until 9 p.m. at
Oh yeah, because
Brighton.
of night skiing.
Yeah.
Which is very nice.
So we got 5 hours of solid skiing at Brighton. Stopped in for a little while at the lodge, had a beer, but like we had a great time at Brighton. Got there in time to. It had been snowing all day, so it was reloading, so there's plenty of powder. And then we watched the kids playing at the park for a while. That was fun.
Oh, those kids.
Those kids.
Those kids. So day 5.
So that night we went home and slept with our families because we were in Salt Lake. Yeah. The next morning we woke up and headed up Little Cottonwood Canyon to hit Alta and Snowbird, and started at Snowbird. Connected. We didn't have a Snowbird contact. Like there was like all the other resorts were like, we're gonna give you this athlete or that athlete, and Snowbird was like, yeah, whatever, just show up. And so we were like, okay. So I show up and we were like, well, what we wanted to do is we wanted to find a local or like a pro to ski with at every resort, so they could show us what the resort was like to them, why it was near and dear to their heart. And so it was like, well, obviously, like there are locals here. We're just gonna like stand at the bottom of the lift and wait for somebody who looks like they're a local. So I see this little blue-haired old woman, right? She's like this little old lady, and she's like shuffling toward the lift. And I come up and I go, hey, we're doing this story about skiing. And I explained it to her and I go, would it be okay if we skied with you for a while this morning? And she looks at me and she goes, sure, if you can keep up.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh, that's cute.
You're
She's
cute.
spunky. She's adorable.
This'll be fun for a run.
So she calls her husband and her friend over and she explains what's going on. And they're like, yeah, cool, great. You guys are taking photos? Can you take some photos of us? And we're like, yeah, sure, we'll take photos of you. And they're like, all right, just keep up.
Again.
And we're like, that's interesting. They both know the same joke. They were amazing.
Oh, wonderful.
They ski 100 days a year at Snowbird.
Wow.
They know all of the hidden places.
So are they like longtime Utah locals then?
They're from Florida.
Okay.
They come out to Utah every year to ski. They have it, so they bought a place at the base of the mountain in their retirement, and they come out and they ski for 100 days, and then they go home.
Wow. Yeah. Gosh, I wish that could. My job would require me to allow me to ski 100 days.
I'm working on that job right now.
You're like, where does this exist? Who will pay me?
I skied 90 last year.
Well done.
Yeah, I'm so proud
You're
of you.
like close. They were, and the couple probably were like, we've done 100.
Yeah, I know. I was like, oh, okay.
They're like -10. I'm sorry. 100 versus 90. You didn't make it.
I thought I'd hit 100 this year because I'm on sabbatical. But between being really, really busy with other work projects and also the fact that the snow sucks, I might get 50. I might, which I know is not something to complain about.
I'm sorry, and like most people are like, I got 3 days.
Like, screw that guy.
I'm sorry, it wasn't 50. Utah problems.
You know what? Like, you got to be a writer because you can write anywhere.
That's true.
You can write anywhere. I used to take my laptop with me on the lift.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd write for a while, I'd throw it back in my backpack, I'd ski for a while, I'd get back on the lift, I'd write for a while.
Like, I swear I was working
It was
today.
the perfect office. I would take office calls, like, at the top of the mountain, like conference calls.
Those are the best. Or like nowadays you have the Bluetooth and you can like just hook it on while you're going down the mountain and someone's like sitting in their boring cubicle and you're like, oh yeah, I'm just curving around some aspen trees.
I call my friend sometimes when we talk, right? I'll be like, hey, what are you doing today? And she's like, I'm writing. What are you doing today? I'm like, I'm writing.
Writing. Nice. So you played with them, the older couple, both at Snowbird and Alta, or just at Snowbird?
Just at Snowbird.
Okay.
Just at Snowbird, and then we headed up to Alta. And at Alta, we connected with Andrea Huskinson, who's a former ski racer, has been skiing at Alta since she was a little girl. She was amazing. She was so much fun. I was on skis again.
Do you feel like you were getting better? Or
yes.
Or legs were tired?
Yes. I mean, my leg actually was pretty good because I've been switching off from
Okay.
skis and snowboards. It wasn't that bad. I've been on board that morning. It was totally great. The best thing about Alta, really, I mean, like the terrain at Alta is amazing, but also, so I have these boots, they're Apex boots, right? And the Apex boots look like snowboarding boots, but they have an outer chassis, right? And so if you walk around Alta wearing Apex boots, everybody thinks you're a snowboarder and they get mad at you. And they're like, hey, you can't be in here. And then you're like, haha, actually.
I've actually got
But the Apex system is awesome. It's especially good, like for me, because like with my leg still healing, like being in ski boots sucks. It really sucks. So, but the best thing about Alta is just like it's like skiing somewhere in the 1950s. And with the exception of the fact that like the ski technology has changed, like the lodges still look like they're from the 1950s. Some of the people there started skiing in the 1950s, and it's just this like old, amazing, beautiful resort that happens to have some of the best terrain and some of the best snow in the United States of America.
Did you guys spend anywhere particular when you guys were on the mountain? Did you guys do a lot of like Catherine's Pass or just kind of explored the whole resort?
God, I wish I could remember at this point. Like people keep asking me that about certain resorts, right? They're like, "Oh, where'd you go at Powder?" And I'm like, "The place with the trees." I went to the place with the
there
trees.
was trees and snows, and I went down.
And they're like, "Where'd you go at Alta?" And I was like, "Oh, at one point we were on the side of this mountain, and it was really steep." And a lot of people, like, if they ski at Alta, they're like, oh, yeah, I know that place.
Yeah.
And then other people are like, oh, okay.
Yeah, they're like, oh,
yeah.
nice. I've seen steep mountains before.
Right. So we finished up Alta, and that was day 5.
Okay, so then we have 2 more days.
Yeah.
Day 6, you headed where?
Day 6, we headed down to Sundance, and this was the only day that we had one resort.
And why is that?
Because Sundance is kind of away from everything else, right? Like the next 2 resorts are much further south. Sundance you could definitely do with, like, you could combine it with Park City, right? And you could come around the back and hit Sundance, or you could probably do one of the Cottonwood resorts and then come down and hit Sundance. You could probably even do like Powder Mountain and then head down to Sundance, but there would be a lot of driving. So it was kind of out there. We had already had a day where we hit 3 resorts, so we had bought ourselves time for one. And this was in the middle of the Sundance Film Festival. And what better thing to do on that week than to go to Sundance, get a morning's worth of skiing, and then go take in a movie.
There you go. And most people aren't actually on the mountains during Sundance, which people get confused about. They're like, oh, but it's so busy. Yes, the parking will probably be a problem, but people aren't on the mountain as much as one would assume.
Place was empty. It was amazing.
So ski, Park
snow.
City, and canyons, and Sundance during Sundance.
Big time. I mean, when we started at Park City during the festival, there's nobody there. I mean, that's the secret, right? If you go to Sundance to watch movies, great, super. But everybody else, like the locals, avoid Park City during the Sundance Film Festival. So there's a bunch of open runs on a really large resort. Same thing at Sundance. There wasn't anybody on the mountain. And we connected there with Brian Wimmer. If you've seen The New Flipper, which was like a TV show in the 1990s, or China Beach, which I think was in the 1980s, you know Brian Wimmer because he's like this actor guy. And he calls Bob Woodward, he calls him Mr. Woodward. Mr. Woodward. And he's a ski ambassador and also a summer sports ambassador. And we skied with him all day. And it was amazing. It was beautiful. Some more of those like crystal aspen tree runs. Lots of good steep and deep. They do grooming really well though there, and our legs were tired, so that was okay. Like we took some easy groomers that day. But by the afternoon, we were like, that was a great day. Jared bled a little. He took like some bump and hit his face with his knee on a snowboard, and he was bleeding everywhere, and so he came down like.
Oh, and bloody snow.
Oh, bloody snow is pretty. It's
as we all gag. Just kidding, it's not pretty.
That was the only bad injury of the week, so that was good.
Impressive.
And it wasn't even that bad. I mean, we put some paper towels on his face, and then we went and watched a movie.
Hey, there you go.
Sundance movies, it was cool. It's always a cool experience. They're not always good movies, because that's the whole idea, right? They're taking chances, and Jared really liked it. I didn't like it very much. And then our friend Nick Thomas came and picked us up at the airport, because you could totally drive down. You could totally easily drive down to the southern Utah resorts, and honestly, if I'm being honest, it's probably faster, but Nick's like, why drive when you can fly?
Yeah, so this is the one spot where you sort of cheated.
So we sort of cheated.
Did a little more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, okay, anybody could do this, but obviously that would cost like some money or a pilot's license or to have a friend, which we happen to have a friend who has a timeshare
When
with a
you
Cessna.
have a friend with a Cessna.
When you have a friend with a Cessna,
Take
you
advantage
load your
of it.
snowboards into the Cessna.
And you go.
Which, by the way, there is not a lot of room in that plane.
There is not. So how many, I mean, it's usually what, a 3-seater, 4-seater?
It was four people.
Okay.
So it was Eric and I in the back, Jared and Nick in the front, and then like our snowboards like between us. And I just like if there's any turbulence, like the snowboards are just gonna like slice our heads off because they're right on our shoulders, right? But it was fun. It was totally fun, and it's a bucket list thing. So you go all out, and Nick was super nice to us. So he takes us down. We do the next day. We do Eagle Point in the morning. Great resort, only open 3 or 4 days a week. This is the great thing I learned about Eagle Point. You can rent the entire resort.
Wait, what?
You can rent the entire resort.
I mean, it's probably a little bit pricey.
It's in the tens of thousands of dollars
Okay.
to do it. But if you think about it, right? Like if you
got 10 friends, that's just $1,000.
Well, okay, if you had 10 friends, but if you had 100 people in your company,
That's true.
right? Like that's.
So you can rent Eagles Point.
Yeah, you can rent the entire resort because it's only open a few days a week, and the other days.
Okay.
You can, it's like, so for a corporate, so we started talking about, like, so my buddies are in the National Guard. They're like, we could totally, like, get a bunch of people in the National Guard and have a retreat here. And I'm like, yes, we will do that. And then I realized that they weren't talking about including me. And I was
you're
like, wait a second, hold
just
on.
kidding. But you need someone to take pictures and write stories.
Right? Yeah, totally. So that was the cool thing. Also, the skiing's amazing. Also, at that point, it had stopped snowing for a while. And we're like, oh, that's too bad. We're not going to get any more powder. And they were, like, laughing at us. They're like, oh, you've never skied here before. We were on main runs. There's still powder on main runs.
Wow. Is it just because it's not as open as much, or is it because of the location?
It's the location. It's the fact that it's not as open as much. It's the fact that it's in it's in a small town.
So if you're willing to drive for how long? What's the drive? 3 hours?
To Eagle Point from the airport, yeah, probably at the most 3 hours.
If you're willing to drive 3 hours, you're going to find yourself with still some really great skiing.
No matter what, yeah. And it was amazing. It's great. Like I would love to like vacation there. Like I could totally see spending a week there. The skiing was great. It's beautiful. It was amazing. The people are incredible. The bar is outstanding. The restaurants are really good.
Because there's not ski and snowboarding if there's not a pre-ski.
There needs to be pre-ski.
I mean, that's just part of it.
It is a mandatory part of it. So we killed it on Eagle Point, hopped in the car, and arrived at Bryan Head, and that was our last resort.
Wow. And what was it like to finish off on Bryan Head?
It was great because skiing Bryan Head is like skiing in another world because it's red rock skiing, right? So I
have not done that.
Oh, it is like being on a different planet.
Wow.
It is incredible. It's beautiful. By that time, it was a bluebird day.
It was like if Star Wars wanted to explore winter sports.
Yes, this is where
This is
Luke
where
and Leia would ski.
This is where Luke and Leia ski.
Yeah. And it was a party. Brian Head is kind of like equidistant between Salt Lake and Las Vegas. It's not too far from the Southern Utah schools, from Dixie and Southern Utah University. And it was, if you've seen Hot Tub Time Machine, Brian Head is, that's Brian Head. That's it. It's just like college students everywhere. We felt like the dirty old men. But it was a party. It was great, and they had live music, and they had a grill going, and they were doing barbecue that night, and there was lots of drinking, and great skiing. And we finished up, and had a couple of cigars, took a couple of shots, and started telling stories.
No, after having done not pretty much all the resorts in Utah, do you have any new favorites or any new thoughts about the
I have a
different
lot
ones?
of new thoughts about a lot of resorts. I don't have a new favorite. Solitude is where I go. Solitude is where we live half the time. Solitude is where I ski most of the time. I love Solitude. By the way, Solitude sucks. It's horrible. Nobody should ever go there.
Right.
Right?
Just put that disclaimer out
Everybody
there.
says, yeah, like actually, I'm just crazy.
Actually, I like it because it's terrible. Don't come to Utah. Don't enjoy the skiing.
So I tell people all the time. So I told people like when I was in Vermont, they're like, "Oh, you're from Utah. I heard the skiing's good there." I'm like, "No, why do you think I'm here? The skiing there sucks. Don't come.
It's terrible.
Never come.
No,
Never come."
Ski somewhere else.
So my favorite resort didn't change, but there were things at every single resort that became my favorite thing. Right, like Cherry Peak is like an amusement park. It has the vibe of an amusement park, and I'm really looking forward to taking my kid to Cherry Peak. Nordic Valley has this great, super old school, super family feel. Like I think half of the ski instructors there are all members of one family. The kids are they're like teenagers, and they're the nicest teenagers in the world. They're like, yes sir this and yes ma'am that, and they're also really great skiers and snowboarders, so they're a ton of fun to ski with. Beaver Mountain, what a family resort, what a amazing place to feel like you're part of, like you're really part of history, right? Like if that resort's been in the same family for 70 years, something like that, for forever. Alta also, the history at Alta is incredible. The people at Alta are a lot of fun. Powder Mountain for steep and deep. Snow Basin for a combination of really amazing tree runs and also really sweet lodges. Deer Valley if you want to pamper yourself. Brian Head if you want to have a party. Brighton if you want to have a different kind of party. Park City if you want to go shopping afterward, and also want to ski. If you only want to ski one resort and not feel like you've only skied one resort, Park City, totally. What am I missing?
Snowbird.
Snowbird if you want to ski with some really rad skiers. I mean, like everybody there is. I mean, there are good skiers at Snowbird. And then Eagle Point if you want a week-long vacation and not have to see anybody and just spend time with your family.
So we are spoiled for a reason.
Yeah.
I mean, take your pick. So your advice then for skiers, whether they're locals or, definitely locals, I guess, because I feel like with most of us locals, we do buy that one pass and
Right.
we play in one location most season long. What is your advice to those of us who are spoiled and how to get out? And
I mean, I would say, look, if you have kids, when they hit the 5th grade, they can get that ski pass for $30 or something from Ski Utah. That's a great excuse, right? Save up the money and hit a few extra resorts. You don't have to hit 14 in a week, but choose the ones you want. You want to tour all the great steep and deep. Like there's 5 resorts for that, right? If you want to tour the family-owned resorts or the ones that have that family-friendly feel, do that. If you want to vacate, there's ways to do this. But I do think, look, it's a few hours drive to all of these places. Choose one different one a year to go explore. Hit that. That's your extra. And 13 years later, you'll be done. You'll have hit every resort in Utah. Right in time, I'm sure, for them to open another resort.
yeah, definitely. And then you can be that 80-year-old couple that hangs out on this chairlifts and scares the young guys.
And challenges the young guys to keep
All right, you keep up. Matthew, thank you for joining us. Where can people find you or follow you on all of your adventures, even beyond your winter sports?
Oh, yeah. I mean, what you really want to do is you want to be following me right now because I hung out last week with Pablo Escobar's personal chef in Colombia.
Oh, yes. This is a story you need to keep up with.
Yes. Okay. So if you want to follow that, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm threading the story. One new recipe every week from Pablo Escobar's personal chef. That's at MD LaPlante on Twitter, MDLAPLANTE. You can also find me at mdlaplante.com.
Wonderful. Well, for all of you listeners out there, you guys have been listening to another episode of Salt Lake Magazine's own podcast, Salt Lake Speaks. You can find this episode as well as others at saltlakemagazine.com/podcasts.